Okay, assessment item number 2, request for research. This video is a deep dive into this assessment item, mostly for those who are struggling to get their head around it and need a bit of reassurance that you're actually on the right track. So as I'm recording this, it is the 7th of September. We're halfway-ish through week 6, and the assessment item is due at the end of week 8. So you've got a couple of weeks. So I will use dates and things like that because this video is specific to this delivery. So the request for research is the second component of the 3 components of the assessment for this unit. The first one you needed to do was the project plan. And in the project plan, you needed to step out the different steps that you would take to complete the request for research. So hopefully you've already got a really good indication of the sorts of activities that you need to be doing. So think about it in terms of, in the earlier stages of this unit, I was getting people to complete a timeline and to complete other activities. A lot of that was leading up to this moment where you needed to put together a background paper essentially on what had happened and what the different things were within the AFL and within racism within the AFL. So you've got 3 elements to this: background to the overall issues in the league, institutional responses to the challenge, and then finally the top 3 potential challenges a newly established team would need to be aware of. It's 2,500 words, and you're going to use most of those. If you get to what you think is the end and you're at about 1,500 words, you have really seriously missed something. It's a research report, 50% of your grade. All right, the criteria for this. 1, the research report makes use of inclusive language and takes into consideration most elements of culture and sensitivities in communicating about culture. What this means is that within your research report itself, to put it bluntly, please don't be racist while talking about racism. So we're talking about things like making sure that you are avoiding using derogatory language, that you're not looking at things as a deficit, that you are being inclusive, and when you are using examples that are not inclusive, that you're making sure that it's very clear that they are quotes and are representative of the views of the people of the time who said it. The reason why this is really important is when we're advising companies, more often than not, they're asking us to do that from a particular perspective. Obviously, the ACT AFL group have asked you to do this piece of research because they need to know what happened, but also because they need to prevent it from happening again in the future. Select and justify communication strategies to suit different negotiation contexts. When we're talking about negotiation in this context, we're not talking about 2 groups of people sitting down opposite each other at a table. What we're talking about is how we're going to get from one point to another point. Metaphorically, think of it more as you're trying to navigate a muddy puddle or something like that. You're trying to get from one point to another point. So how is it that you are suggesting people move from one position to another position? So how are you going to work that into your report? Identify and critique opportunities for conflict resolution within business. The research report has identified potential conflict points in relation to the requested research and its context, and has suggested a potential resolution to the conflict using appropriate communication techniques. So in your research report, you're going to be talking about really high-level conflicts that have happened. So if you think about the events around Nicky Winmar, you think about the events around Adam Goodes, they were not just potential conflict points, they were real conflict points. So how do we use communication in the future to try and reduce the opportunity for that sort of thing to happen again? Adjust communication types and strategies in response to changing information sets. If required, the research report recognises that this RFS, so request for service, also an RFR, request for research, is not produced in isolation, and there is the potential for multiple strategies depending on outside influences. This scenario is not happening in a bubble. It's real life stuff, and your suggestions and what comes through in your report is that it is a potential issue that can happen anywhere. Like I've maintained all the way through, there's just as much chance that another controversy around racism could happen at any point in the AFL. Finally, communicate professionally across multiple communication types. The research report is well structured and written. Spelling, grammar and overall presentation is in keeping with the expectation of business. So this is a business-focused report, it's not an academic one, but you are using references where possible. You can use, Harvard is preferred currently, but it's just about to switch across to APA. So basically whatever referencing approach you would like to use, please do. Just use it well, use it consistently. And if you're a double degree law student, please do not use the law alternative. Use Harvard or APA. The other expectation of business in this context is also you may need to quote some pretty strong language. Please avail yourself of the keyboard in terms of disguising that. In business reports, you wouldn't necessarily use the full word. You would use the asterisk and the ampersand and all of those sorts of things in there. Please, for the sanity of the person that's going to be marking this, avail yourself of that top line of your keyboard. To support you through this, within the modules, there is also a research report style guide. Now, this recording itself will also appear in here as well. I, to be honest with you, got about 2 minutes into doing the recording in the virtual room before I realised that I had indeed put myself on mute. So, the research report style guide, this is here to support you. If you want to go and take a different approach, you're well within your rights to do so. I don't mind, but just remember that the core you need to make sure that you are in keeping with the expectations of business. So, overview, start with your main point, organise your content, please use titles and headings. Look at the structure. So your title page speaks for itself, the table of contents, please. Executive summary, write this part last. Right, introduction, then the bulk of the report comes through in the research. My suggestion to people is to pick probably 3 key events and handle them chronologically. So the easy ones are probably Nikki Winmar and then Adam Goods, and then choose one of the more contemporary ones, like say Collingwood issue or the allegations that happened last year in relation to Hawthorn, I think it was. I can't remember. There have been so many. To make it easier on yourself, then that makes them contained and you can treat them as 3 separate things. I would then treat the 2 halves of it, so the outlining the events that happened and then the institutional response to it, I would treat them as discrete things within the same section. So the heading could be for a section, say Nikki Winmar, and then you could have events, and then you're describing what happened, and then you're having another subheading that says institutional response, and then you describe what response the institution had, so what did the league do. Same deal with Adam Goods, and then also the other one. If you think of it in terms of you've only got 2,500 words, you'll have a couple of hundred words for the beginning, you'll need probably about 500 words for the end, so then you can start doing some maths where you're breaking down how much you need to write about each section. If you think you're going to run a little bit short, choose something else, pop a fourth thing in, but you need to make sure that you are broadly describing how the AFL has managed to get to the point that they're at now. When it comes to your recommendations, explain the strategies you suggest to deal with the conclusions from your findings or solve the original problem. The recommendations for this particular task, you're being asked to highlight 3 challenges. Now, the highlighting of the 3 challenges is really quite important to you, both for this task but also because they can form the foundation for your next task. So you're going to put together 3 suggestions or 3 things that you think the club needs to be wary of. Perhaps you might identify some things that the institutions didn't get right from the beginning and you think that a newly forming club should. Your conclusion, wrap it all up. A conclusion is a pretty standard thing. They're the references. On the references, a question that I have been asked quite a bit is what type of references are we using? For this particular task, you will actually be using more from newspapers, podcasts, and documentaries and that sort of thing. You will have opportunities to use academic references, but for the most part, for this particular task, you'll be using standard publicly available resources. So please do use headings and subheadings, okay? You might find it easier to put the autofill table of contents at the beginning of your report so that as you're writing it, it helps you can use it as hyperlinks to bounce around. I suggest to people that you use Word for this length of document. Google Docs is also good, but you'll need to use Word to hand it in. Keeping in mind that you all have access to the Microsoft application. Please avail yourself of those. Use your student login. Language, you're the expert here. Please use the right types of language. There's some detailed instructions there, detailed examples there. Language tips. Sentence gives us one new piece of information. If there's more than one piece of information, break it into 2 sentences. Paragraphs should only discuss one main point. Don't use a long word when you use a short one. Think about your language choices. Make sure that you're using all of your words deliberately. Referencing, again, formatting. A word on ChatGPT and the use of large language models or AI to do this work. Please don't. We have had students try and it has been a disaster for them. In the unit outline, there is a note to say that you can't use AI in the preparation or in the putting together of this particular assessment item. It needs to be all of your own work. So please make sure that it is your own work. Having said that, if you do or if you have used AI in the preparation of this, make sure that you are keeping screenshots and that you are covering yourself to prove that while you may have used AI for a little bit of it, that it is actually your work at the end. Employers, and this is something that comes up at forum after forum that I attend on the AI in business, employers want students when they come out of university to know how to do these things, not necessarily that they know how to get AI to do them. If an AI can replace you, then probably it should, harshly, but anyway. So a suggested approach to this. What I will do now is pop a Word document up. Right. Here is a Word document. So a suggested approach. I'm going to draw it. Okay. So 1, you're going to have your intro. So you'll do that. And then you'll have a subheading. And then that might be Nikki Winmar or topic 1. And then you'll have what happened. And then you'll have the institutional responses to that. Then you might have a couple of sentences that connect this bit and this bit, because this bit here is going to be your second one. So it might be Adam Goods. And then you'll do these two things all over again. So what happened? Institutional responses. Then you might have another joining paragraphy thing. And so on and so forth. You'll do that again. When it comes to the end, you'll have 1, 2, 3 recommendations, probably under a heading that says recommendations. Then you'll have your conclusion, which is your next steps. And then that'll be it. And you've got 2,500 words. On these, the feedback that you should get in assessment item number 2, before assessment item number 2, will more than likely relate directly to these 3 things here. What these are going to tell you is whether or not these 3 recommendations or suggestions are appropriate for the next assessment item. So in your final assessment item, you need to be talking about 4. So basically, the feedback that you'll get on this assessment task is how well you framed those particular 3, because your background stuff should be leading up to these 3 things. How well you've put those 3 things together, and then you'll basically be told, yes, take those 3, develop them, add 1 more for your final assessment item, and you're on the right track. My advice to you is to listen to that feedback. Anyhow, and last but most certainly not least, the scenario itself. The number 1 place where people get themselves into trouble is that they go outside the scenario. And it doesn't matter how many times I repeat myself, that this here is your scenario. You need to stay within your scenario. You need to make sure that you're talking about ways that we can reduce the amount of racism in AFL. So make sure that your scenario sticks to, your research report sticks to that scenario. It's really key that you do that, because if you don't do that, that's where you get yourself into trouble, and that's where you won't get the grade that you think that you're going to get. Okay? Over the next couple of weeks, you will have multiple opportunities to get feedback on what you're doing. In workshops during week 7, there will be no new content. There'll be no me talking or anything like that. It'll be me listening and giving feedback. So bring yourself. If you want to treat it as a writing time, that's great. Ask your questions. So workshops next week are drop-in. So a reminder, Monday workshops are at 1:30 in 11B44, 5:30 online. On Wednesday, we've got 3:30 in 11B44, and Thursday morning at 8:30. You are welcome to come to any of those workshop times to ask your questions, and I will be there. If you want to send me a detailed plan that you would like to get me to email you feedback on, as long as you've got that to me by lunchtime of week 7, so Friday of next week, I will be able to get that back to you. Please, if you're emailing me over the weekend of the 16th of September, I won't be responding to emails until the Wednesday, the 20th, just simply because it's my birthday and I'm taking a couple of days away. So the back end of week 8, I'll be back available online for people to email me, but I will be having that little break there in the middle. If you've got questions, email me. If I don't get back to you quickly enough, but please be reasonable, email me again. I have been having the odd trouble with receiving emails. Okay. Good luck. And please let me know if you've got any other questions. Thanks.